Well, this week we begin the season of Epiphany. Now, you may have noticed that in church we love seasons. I think it's because even though we think of history as being linear, we experience life as cyclical. And we seek order when life feels like chaos, and while marking seasons seems to give us a sense of order. So in the last two seasons, in Advent and Christmas, we anticipated and then celebrated the coming of Christ into the world as a little baby. The divine somehow becoming human to be with us in the struggles and the joys of life. So now in this season of Epiphany, we'll turn our attention to growing up with Christ as he matures, and then us learning from Christ as he learns how to teach and heal and to reveal the love of God. This word epiphany refers to a sudden perception, a sudden recognition of the essential nature of things or the meaning of something. And we find ourselves saying, aha, I had an epiphany. Now I understand something I didn't understand before. And in Christ, we believe we've experienced the appearance, the manifestation of the divine, of God with us in the world. So in this season, we follow the life and the teachings of Jesus, paying attention to the ways that his life reflects the character of God, the compassionate and loving character of God. Now, throughout history, this idea of God becoming human, well, that was scandalous just in and of itself. But the idea of God becoming this vulnerable, needy, messy little baby and then into a, somewhat precocious child, it was a lot for people to wrap their heads around. Because if God became a baby, then it would mean that, God had a lot of growing up to do. It would mean God had to mature and develop and grow, just like the rest of us do. But today's reading seems to make it pretty clear that Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and with people. He didn't arrive as some ready-formed model of perfect maturity. Like us, he had to learn to walk before he could run. He had to learn to read and to write and how to communicate with people. So in the Gospel of Luke, we go from baby Jesus, born in a manger and then being dedicated in the temple, to the beginning of his adolescence. And sometimes I wish that we had more stories from Jesus' younger years, but maybe the mystery of not knowing is a good thing. Maybe this one story is enough. Because, adolescence is hard from any perspective. Since we've all gone through it, we all have some memory of, the good times and the not so good and the downright horrible parts of growing up through those teenage years. That time when you're no longer an innocent child running around and playing and not even realizing that you're completely dependent on others to keep you alive. But then, as you become a teenager, you're not quite an adult, and you're generally not as smart as you think you are. And then being a parent gives a whole new perspective on adolescence. I mean, even not being a parent, even being a dedicated aunt or uncle or teacher, you've experienced that cloud of fear that comes with caring about a teenager. And our story from our scriptures today is one of those fear-filled moments. For we find that the family had been on their annual festival vacation to Jerusalem with all of the aunts and the uncles and the cousins in tow. And then as they start to return, the boy Jesus stays behind in Jerusalem, but without his parents knowing. And assuming that this was a big group of travelers, they went on for a day without realizing he wasn't there until they started to actually look for him. And not finding him, they had to return to Jerusalem, search for him again. And after 3 days, they find him in the temple. 3 days. Think about it. Not knowing where your kid is for 3 days. I mean, now there would be a missing persons report out. The APB search would be on. Your phones would be beeping with an amber alert on everybody's phone. They do find him sitting in the temple among the teachers, listening to them, asking questions. We're told that all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers, so he was precocious. But at least they were relieved that he hadn't been kidnapped, he wasn't on drugs, but they were exhausted and they were pumped full of adrenaline. Luke tries to put it nicely here. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. That's a good word for it. And his mother says, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been searching for you in great anxiety." I think it's really a matter of how you read it, of the tone of voice. Why, child, have you treated us like this? We're in a state of panic. And he answers, "Well, why would you be searching for me? Didn't you know that I would be in my Father's house?" This might have been an honest question, but if you've ever had a conversation with a teenager, you can probably hear a little bit of sarcasm in his voice. I actually love the way that Anne Lamott describes this encounter. At the same time he was blowing the elders away with his insightful questions, how is he treating his parents? I'll tell you, he's making them crazy. He has ditched them. And Mary and Joseph have looked everywhere, and finally they find him in the last place they thought to look, in the temple, a teenager. And immediately he mouthed off, "Oh, sorry, I was busy doing this other stuff, my Father's work. Like, you're not the boss of me, and I don't have to listen to you." Now, he might not have used those exact words, but he may or may not have been sarcastic, but he was learning how to function in a family. He was learning how to relate to parents and teachers appropriately, maybe with some care and some compassion. So, if we were imagining a perfect teenage Jesus, he would have thought ahead to let his parents know that he wanted to stay at the temple for a while, instead of just walking away and scaring them to death. But I think that Luke wants us to get that Jesus learned and Jesus grew each year like the rest of us. Because he ends the story with the words, "Then he went back with them. He went to Nazareth and he was obedient to them." And his mother treasured these things in her heart. I'm pretty sure his mother is the one who remembered this story and told it. But Jesus increased in wisdom and in years and in divine and human favor. He gradually grew, one day at a time, 1 year at a time. And I don't know about you, but for me, this makes me feel better about myself. Because following Jesus does not mean aiming for some unattainable perfection and then beating ourselves up for failing to reach this unrealistic standard. Instead, we start from somewhere, like he started, from a helpless baby to a child, to a teenager, to adulthood. And adulthood is a long process of growing and maturing. We follow on that same kind of journey of learning and growth and growing and learning. And we might reach our physical peak, but we never stop growing spiritually and emotionally and relationally. We are never too old to keep learning. And now the science of neuroplasticity lets us know that you actually can teach an old dog new tricks, that we are never too old to learn and to grow. So at the beginning of a new season, at the beginning of a new year, it brings out a desire and a hope for creating a better future. We want to make, new commitments, maybe to reassess and reevaluate our lives. Consider how, maybe we could be kinder, healthier, wiser, just a little bit this year. We seem as humans to need a space in time to feel like we can slow down and breathe and then start again. So it wouldn't hurt to think of the whole month of January as a time for listening to your heart, observing your world, contemplating your life, and contemplating the life of Jesus, and then choosing some new commitments, practices, things to help you grow and change. So this season of Epiphany, reminding us that we're always growing and always learning, that we don't have to go by business as usual or stay stuck in the status quo, but that we can see our lives in new ways. The impact, the events of the past don't need to imprison us. We do have the freedom to change our minds, to reshape our attitudes, to cultivate some new behaviors. For behold, God is doing a new thing, and we can do new things as well. And I think this truth from this story is affirmed in the reading from Colossians, where Paul writes, "You are God's chosen and holy and beloved," which is the same description that was given to Jesus and used for us. As God's beloved children, we can grow in compassion and kindness, in humility and meekness and patience, and finally, above all, putting on love, which binds everything together in harmony. Now, Christine Walters Painter is a writer who recommends, some practical steps for considering what you hope for in the new year. And I like hers, so I'm going to share them. She suggests that we consider taking some time to prepare, to really listen for the deeper longing that is pulsing inside of you. Listen for what emerges from that place of stillness, grounded in your own awareness of your own goodness, rather than starting from a list of your shortcomings. What within you is good that you want to grow? Second, reflect on those relationships in the past year, the past years that could use some reconciliation, recognizing that the way to move forward is by acknowledging those places where we have lost connection with others. Maybe asking, is there someone who has hurt us in the past year that we need to offer forgiveness as well? And then third, she suggests taking a contemplative walk in a peaceful place. And as you take each step, ask yourself, how do you want to walk in the new year? Paying attention to what responses rise up within you. Then as you continue to walk, imagine yourself stepping across a threshold of something new. Notice how your body feels. Notice what you are being asked from within to do, to look at, to change. And then maybe ask, is there something that you might be able to do, some small thing in the year ahead that would make the world a better place? We often talk about growing in Christ, but in this season, we'll consider how we can grow and mature with Jesus as we watch him change and grow in wisdom and in stature, and in favor with God and in favor with people.